Yeehaw, hello, and howdy. Thank you for joining us on the Canon Stats podcast. We're going to try some video today, so we'll see how this overall goes. It seemed like there was some pretty good response to the initial YouTube version of it, so we'll try to lean into it and do a little bit more. We're going to have a lot to talk about today. We are in no shortage of topics, so I think we'll start with some Southampton stuff, maybe lean into some Saliba, look forward to City, and then we'll kind of get into whatever else we have time for. I'm Scott Willis, and always I am joined by my co-host Adam Bogey. Welcome, Adam. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, right. That was the ultimate silver lining on an otherwise very dark cloud over the weekend, wasn't it? That we could.
Yeah, we can't smile without them, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, I would rather it be City Ham's Day or whatever at this point. But who knows if we'll get that? Who knows if anyone will get that anytime soon at this rate?
So I know that this has probably been something that everybody's been doing, but how many different lineup permutations have you gone through in your head over the last few days?
Way too many. It's funny because I feel like, don't you feel like on some level, like the lineup is already determined for Wednesday, barring somebody getting, a tummy ache like Xhaka did, or sniffles or whatever he had on Friday. It just feels like Arteta is not too much of a tinkerer. So I just, that's my psych read on him, is I think he's probably already decided. And meanwhile, I can't decide a hypothetical lineup here 2 days before the game. So I'm glad I'm not the manager.
Yeah. All right. So let's kind of dig in. So I have here my label as what the heck is happening with Arsenal right now. Yeah. It feels really weird. So we have 3 draws in a row, two times where we drew from 2-0 up, and now we get a draw from being 2-0 down. Crazy stuff happening in Arsenal matches right now.
Yes. And we, one of our followers on Twitter, I think, pointed out kind of an interesting thing. Like, we could have won against Liverpool and lost the other 2, or won against West Ham and lost the other 2, or won on Friday and lost the other 2, and we'd be in the same place. I feel like the attitude would probably be a little different, and I think that's a good point that he made. But it's just, I think it's pretty well publicized that the defending is just kind of abandoned us, really. There's just been, it's like a collective. It's been, I think if you look at each one individually, it's kind of like a collective series of let-offs or just like defensive like brain farts that seem to be happening. I don't know how else to describe what happened to Aaron Ramsdale at the beginning, passing out like that. I don't know how to describe, the party turnover against West Ham, the party turnover that leads to the corner for the third goal. Rob Holding probably could have played that corner better. Zinchenko didn't really track anyone at the back post though. And, whether Zinchenko should have been able to stop what I really thought was like a 1 in 100 nutmegging from Trent is up for debate. But on the cross, Ben White loses his man at the back post. So it's just, it kind of feels pretty spread out. Like it's a little bit of everybody's fault, but there's just mistake after mistake after mistake. And it's not that we weren't seeing mistakes, in the first part of the season before the World Cup, or even World Cup to April. But it just seems like they're getting more and more numerous. And I don't know, maybe that is somehow to blame on Rob Holding. Maybe everybody's freaked out that he's in the lineup. I've said publicly that if that is the case, we've got bigger problems than just one guy. But it just seems like maybe there is some level of, whether it's the toll of a long season or just the pressure that one bad thing happens and it seems to kind of snowball a little bit and get away. That's just what it feels like to me. Maybe if we stop playing with our dinner at 2-0 up at West Ham, things are different, but we didn't. So here we are.
Yeah, and I don't know. I guess I have some thoughts here. Like, it feels like we are having like the ultimate like punishment for some of the things that have happened against us, where it's not necessarily deserved. I mean, it's stuff that happens in sport, right? Like, this is kind of what makes it fun, and you kind of have these sorts of moments that happen. But it feels like we've gotten the ultimate punishment in basically every situation so far this season, or at least in the last couple of games. I don't
Yeah.
know. What do you think about that? Like, is it that
Yeah, no,
more of the
I think
problem,
that's
or
fair.
yeah?
I mean, I do think that's fair. I think that, there's that stretch in the second half where, against Southampton specifically, where things look so dire, like just dead. And then Odegaard makes it 2-3, and then all of a sudden we're back again. But, for Southampton to score the three that they scored, I think that, there were some things that had to kind of bounce against us. I give Carlos Alcaraz like a lot of credit. He played a pretty much a perfect ball to Walcott for that goal. But, just things like wrong bounce of the ball, things like Reece Nelson missing by probably a couple inches off that really weird deflection that would have been a stupid, crazy goal if it had happened. Leandro Trossard hitting the crossbar. I mean, you just look at, like, I've kind of stopped. I've moved away from XG a little bit on an individual game basis and like to look a little bit more at field tilt and XG together, and just shots and everything. And you look at the balance of the last two games, and it's really not like Arsenal are going out there and getting pantsed, and then getting a lucky draw, like they're spamming a result where they were completely outplayed. It's largely, Southampton in particular, it's largely a one-sided game where the other side, I think, what was the shots, 25-8, but shots on target was like 5-6.
Yeah, exactly.
So
a very
it's just,
weird kind of statistical match overall.
yeah.
Just before, like, I want to like break down like more of the Southampton match, but so I was looking here. So I know there's kind of a lot of like hand wringing about like the set play stuff, and there has been quite a bit of a change there, but it's not, I don't think, as big of a change as some people might think. So I was looking here over the last 6 matches, Arsenal are giving up 2.6 set play shots per match. Before the Fulham game, so going back to Bournemouth, Arsenal were about 2. So we're seeing about less than 1 shot, and almost all of that change comes from 7 against West Ham. So like I feel like there's some weird stuff that kind of happens there. Just the overall shot stuff, again, like I think that is really highly drawn by the Liverpool, where they had 19 open play shots against Arsenal. So like that brings it to 9 total over the last matches, compared to just under 7 total for this, the season before that. So it's like, I don't think the defensive numbers have been all that different. I think it just really kind of feels like we're being punished pretty significantly with kind of the results overall going against us.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's kind of with Liverpool, there were a number of high probability chances that they did not take at the end. And that,
and again, like, right, and you think about, again, I think that's a good point, right, where we're looking at single game XG can kind of skew things, because almost all of Liverpool's XG happens in the last 10-15 minutes of that match. Like, they have a huge bump there. Before you kind of think about, in that second half, Arsenal actually did really well to kind of limit what they were able to do.
Right.
And it's just, they end up getting like 3 XG in 15 minutes.
Yeah. And I mean, Aaron Ramsdale, a lot of credit for what he did toward the end of that game. But it feels like, with the exception of that kind of 10-minute stretch, West Ham, and I mean, obviously give the penalty away to West Ham, right? We gave a penalty away in that game, didn't we?
Yeah.
And see, I'm losing track. It's been too hard to watch. But you give that away. But outside of that, it feels like just, some really like clinical type stuff being thrown in our faces, and then we haven't been very clinical, with the exception of a couple of guys, really. And it's just kind of like, when it rains, it pours. It's like the perfect storm of bad things that can happen sometimes in sports. So I mean, that's why, like you said, that's why you play the games, though. Although City is a collection of 11 cyborgs that they just like re-oil and take off their USB chargers and then send out onto the pitch every game. Things like that happen to them too. They came out and largely dominated Nottingham Forest and got a 1-1 draw. So you can't rule out stuff like that happening again, especially as they get tired. And, I just look at that week in May where they host Chelsea, probably an easy win, but then at Brentford, at Brighton, 3 days apart, a week ahead of their Manchester United FA Cup final. Like, there's just going to be, I think there might be some weird stuff that happens, weirder than people think.
Yeah, and maybe we'll have another Frank Lampard, masterpiece against him, right? Because I think he was the coach for the Everton. I think they had 2 shots in that match and ended up with a 1-1 draw.
Yeah,
I would take something like that again from Frank Lampard if he wants to have a stock rise with me.
They do have to visit Everton as well. Sean Dyche is kind of the master of, just playing 90 minutes of complete trash and getting a result out of it somehow against teams that are way better than him, especially in his own building. I was about to say Turf Moor. He's been at Burnley for so long, but at Goodison. So that's not necessarily an easy fixture either, especially when you're looking ahead to Real Madrid. It's, there's just, I feel like for all the talk about Arsenal and our schedule, we still have to go to St. James Park, blah, blah, blah. Really very little on City. And I think that really the only thing that would have made people even like take any notice of their schedules if it was 7 games and like 5 of them were against the Big Six, 4 of them were away. But people, I think you kind of underrate the difficulty. And we have Wolves on the final day of the season. Like, things like that can mess with you too, be a lot harder than you expect.
Yeah, I'm kind of holding out hope that Wolves will be safe and on the beach, and we can have a nice day out in the sunshine, and then hopefully it leads to lifting the trophy at the end. But I know that's a little unlikely. Let's dig into the Southampton match. So I guess a good place to start is the lineup. So Granit Xhaka misses with illness. What was your initial thoughts with Vieira coming in? Was that your change that you would have done?
Yeah, it was. Okay. I think that the educated person should not be surprised at Fabio Vieira's performance this season. I think that he came in. He did not start last season as a main 11 player for Porto. It took him a while to break through. Probably about half of the season. Once Luis Diaz was gone, that's when he really started to get a lot more chances. And I think you watch him play for 1 game. He's slight. He's not a big guy, and he's probably never going to be a physically strong person. He's a finesse player. But that's why I've maintained forever and ever and ever that the future is not Partey, Vieira, Odegaard. It's just not, or Rice or whomever at 6. It's just not. He's a Martin Odegaard. He's not a clone of Martin Odegaard, but I think that's the role that he's meant to play, or emergency right wing, although I think most people would prefer one of 3 or 4 choices ahead of him for good reason. So that said, I think coming into that game, you could not deny that the 3 times that he'd been called upon to play in important games with the starters that he had performed well. He had the very good performance at Brentford early in the season, which really fed into the hype of him and potentially being better than expected and all this stuff. He started at Bournemouth. That was a game where we struggled to control the midfield a little bit. But I thought his performance was, it was better than this last one anyway. And then I believe it was against Wolves, Granit Xhaka came off with an injury and he ended up playing like 75 minutes and did well. He got an assist in that game. So I don't blame Arteta at all for that choice. I think that there's a tremendous amount of, at risk of getting myself in trouble, a tremendous amount of overconfidence in Emile Smith-Rowe right now in the Arsenal fan base. Yeah. Not necessarily saying that he's bad or anything like that, but I don't think that I just don't think that he should really enter into that conversation right now. So that was my feeling, was that it was the closest thing to right that we could do.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I had in my head when I saw that was maybe it's Trossard that comes in. You kind of think like of a guy on form who would deserve to get that spot. That would have been my only thing that potentially could have pushed me there. But you think about what Arteta has done, and he is a guy that really kind of likes to stick with like for like when he has the choice to be able to do things. Vieira was probably the first choice no matter what. I guess I would have only thought maybe that is where Trossard could potentially come in. But we haven't really seen Trossard start from that kind of position, and it
Yeah.
seems like it's more of an emergency thing. And right, we saw it like for the last 30 minutes of this game.
Yeah, and that's kind of that rings like correct for me, and always has as long as the Trossard 8 stuff has been out there. Is that if you need firepower and you are willing to risk the back, then yeah, that makes sense. After what happened against Southampton, I wouldn't blame Arteta for wanting to try Trossard as the other 8 if he had to. I think you're going to run into a lot of the same problems though.
Yeah,
The big advantage being that Trossard is more experienced, and I think that especially this was something like he's getting up to like 500 minutes in the Premier League now, Fabio Vieira. So he's still settling in. Fans do not have patience for players to settle in. It's understandable, particularly in a title race. But yeah, it's gonna take some time because he's not like the P and P guy. He's a very much a finesse guy. He goes by feel, and when those guys get out of their rhythm, it's tough. They look a little rough. Lord knows Odegaard has had games where he just wasn't in his bag basically and looked really bad. You could argue like the first hour of that game, Odegaard did not look great. So
right. Yeah, I think you could say like for the first hour, like Vieira was actually a better player than Odegaard
I
was.
think at the very least they were about the same.
Yeah.
But one guy not being the captain and not being in the starting lineup, I think made him more of a target for some of that.
Yeah, and he's the easiest one to point to because he's not among the first 11. He doesn't have the credit in the bank necessarily that Odegaard has. And I think some of the frustration with Vieira, because I know I certainly felt it watching the match, was that he got on like the end of a few like kind of plays, and like there was a couple moments where like it felt like the shot was there for him to take it, and he shied away or he tried to pass, or I think there was the one moment where he took an extra touch and then tried to like very carefully like pass it into the corner rather
Yeah,
than kind of put the laces through it kind of a thing. So I think those kind of moments really stick with people because they're very visceral. You see that and it's like, oh, this is a chance. Why aren't we doing better to take it? So I think those things really kind of stick with him. And I was certainly frustrated with Vieira, but I think all in all it was like a 6 out of 10 kind of thing. Like he wasn't like the problem. And I think that kind of leads into the next one. Like what, if anything, like do you think was the problem in this match? Like I know a lot of people are saying, oh, Rob Holding was the problem. And I think there's some domino kind of effects kind of with Holding, but I don't know, like he is what he is at this point, right?
mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is what this would have been start number 5 for him.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think that you're at the point now where we can say, guys are freaked out to be playing with them. Saw Zinchenko early in the game after Holding, I think maybe played a poor pass or something and turned it over. Once play stopped, Zinchenko came over and said, "Hey, head up! Like you can play these balls." I don't think he's just like lying to him, right?
Yeah.
Holding to me, and going back to the I think it's the 2021 season, he ended up starting like 28 league games. He actually had pretty darn good passing numbers. I think that high line really exposes him quite a bit.
Yeah.
And he's not the guy for that. He's not fleet of foot. So it's a little tough, but what happened? Listen, I don't like blaming individual players or something, but I can't help wonder how that game goes differently if Ramsdale doesn't play that ball.
That first one, right?
25 seconds. We came into that game with a ton of pressure on us. I think that, this is new territory for a lot of these guys. I think there is a certain air of inevitability to Manchester City. So to come out in a high pressure situation where they want to like step on somebody's throat and get a 4-0 win and come out and be like, yeah, we are title contenders. And then to have your keeper ship a goal in the first 20, 25 seconds is just, I mean, it's a shot to the throat,
Yeah.
and I don't really blame guys for getting shook because of that. So you just wonder what happened. For all the great things about Ramsdale, I mean, this is the first time he's been top half of the table, or second time because last season,
Mhm.
this late in the season. So, maybe it's just something that he's got to get used to. I don't know, but it just felt like a major mental error on his part.
Yeah, and I think this was like the first time this season where I really kind of feel like the team panicked after
Mm-hmm.
that. Normally, like we've seen, every time, or at least it feels like every time Arsenal have gone down, the team is able to handle it, right the ship, respond relatively quickly. I think that's been one of the signature things that this team has done this year. And it really felt like everybody rushed everything right away.
Yeah.
It felt like we needed to go get that equalizer in the next 5 minutes. When
Yeah.
in reality, right, we had 90 minutes. Like, I mean, I think everybody would have backed Arsenal to score 2 goals in 90
Yeah.
minutes at the
Oh,
start
yeah.
of like that one goal really shouldn't have changed things as much as it did. But it really did feel like for 20 minutes until Theo Walcott scores the signature Theo Walcott goal, Arsenal were totally on tilt.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree, and it's not what you want to see. It's difficult. I mean, it's I think that's the thing that people forget is that these sports, especially the ones that come down to like inches and millimeters, like the mental aspect of it is so big.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if that wasn't true, you wouldn't see players like Tomiyasu, for example, like an incredibly intelligent player, so reliable, so technical. I mean, he came in for a stretch and it seemed like he just had forgotten how to pass the ball forward. Like every ball off of his foot was bad for a while. He got through it, and that's the way to get out of it is to like trust your plan. And it did seem like that was not quite Arsenal going forward for that stretch before the second goal. It was like you said, it was like I would Arsenal. I would say you would probably describe them as like a high powered attacking side, but I don't think you would say that they were a fast paced attacking side. It's definitely more deliberate. It's more feeling out the defense and exploiting the opportunities that you get that way. And you're right. They look like they were trying to force it.
Yeah. So I think one of the other things that stuck out at me for this match, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it, is the period right after halftime, where Southampton make a change. They go to the back five and basically cede possession to Arsenal. What do you make of Arsenal's kind of like inability to actually create anything from there? Like, is that a worry, or was it just kind of like weird things can happen in 25-minute stretches? I guess, yeah. What are your thoughts from there? Because
Yeah.
I guess I came out worried.
Yeah, I mean, so at that point, like here's your rewind is it's 2-1 going into the half. Martinelli scored shortly after the Walcott goal. And Arsenal, generally speaking, kept the pressure pretty high the rest of the half. And then, yeah, I think he took off, Ruben Celis took off Alcaraz and brought on Lianco, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going full on five at the back. I tweeted at the time, like, you guys, a point actually doesn't help Southampton. You guys should be going for a win. And, sure enough, they drew, and it's not going to help them avoid relegation. But anyway, yeah, so I mean, Arsenal were all over the final third for that first 15 to 20 minutes. But you're right, it was like few shots, if any, between.
Yeah, I think there was 0 shots. So I was looking here. So all the way until Southampton get their third goal, Arsenal have almost 80% possession. They have 80% field tilt. So really, really controlling the ball. I think one of the things I looked here too is that in the first half, Southampton did really well pressing Arsenal. and not making it easy to be able to get through in the second half, or at least that first part of that second half. Like they just abandoned the press almost entirely.
Yeah, let's go back.
Arsenal basically were like perfect in passing in their own half. Like it was really, they tried a few long balls that didn't come off, but overall, like if they wanted to pass the ball in their own half, they were doing it without any sort of pressure on them at all. So I think that is the one that kind of worries me. So yeah, 12 shots in the first half basically, and then 0 for the first 25 minutes, which was certainly a worry.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely worrying. It's like it's hard to describe exactly, but sometimes you get the feeling that that this side is an attacking group. Kind of does the opposite of what I was talking about a minute ago, where they were trying to force it through. They're kind of like looking for the chance sometimes, instead of trying to, maybe take something that is a little bit less. But I think that, a few other things really came into play. I mean, Jesus didn't have his best game in the box. I thought there were a lot of times where it just seemed like he was struggling to establish himself at all with the ball anywhere near there. That first hour really was rough for Odegaard too. I think if you're looking for a ball in to create a chance, a lot of them are going to come from him. That, to a lot of credit to Saka and Martinelli. I thought they were awesome and they were great in that stretch too. They were just dominating the fullbacks, but I don't know. I mean, I wish I had a good explanation for why that was happening. It just feels like sometimes it's like patience to a fault. And then you end up not seeing anything, or maybe, or like a party aired shot from 30 yards or something like that is what happens.
Yeah, no, it was a very weird kind of thing. But then, Arsenal did get the flurry of pressure at the end. It nearly came off. I remember, the first goal, or you get to 3-2, and I'm like, maybe. And then we get it to 3-3 and I was like, really, maybe now? And like, there was the two chances where it was probably like a matter of, probably 10 inches total between those two shots. And, and that could have been the difference in the match.
Yeah. No, I mean, I guess in a lot of ways, like as an attacker off the bench, it's kind of like your dream. You want to come in where it's just like full bore all going forward, like Nketiah and Trossard and Nelson, and just like when are you going to see all the attacking subs used at once? But without taking too much away from them, I thought they all did well in their chances to come on, especially Nelson and Trossard. I thought were valuable late on in the game. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know. It still feels emotional for me. It still hurts because I think you can make an argument for the second goal, but I just feel like the first and the third were kind of given away.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good spot to kind of make a pivot to some, looking forward stuff rather than looking back. But first, let's do a quick housekeeping. The show is supported by our much appreciated premium subscribers, where for just $5 a month, you'll get at least 5 additional articles per month of things. We just have an article out actually yesterday looking at Mason Mount and how he could potentially fit with Arsenal. So you'll get awesome stuff like that. If you enjoyed the episode, be able to give us a review, be able to, if you're watching on YouTube, give us the thumbs up, doing those kinds of things. We really appreciate everybody listening. We're trying to get back into doing this a little bit more regularly. So, if you like the show, we really appreciate all those kinds of things. So the big topic on everybody's mind now is what to do with Saliba. So Ornstein is reporting today that he is going to be out for Manchester City, potentially out now for the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I think we just talked about it this, right, when we saw the lineup for Southampton. Do you think he's going to make a change now with City on the horizon, seeing that he didn't do it for Southampton to kind of do a practice run?
It's a great question. And you do. I wish I knew to what extent the possibility of Saliba returning is playing on Arteta's decisions. Because So the thing that always gave me a little bit of optimism that Saliba maybe would return is that they didn't shut him down when he went through all the tests and everything.
Hmm.
We've seen that with other players. Elneny immediately shut down, gets a surgery. Tomiyasu was on the operating table like the night after Sporting or the morning after.
Yeah.
So if I knew what that guy's back is, what's going on there, and what the prognosis is, I feel like it'd be so much easier to figure out what Arteta's thinking. Um, but as far as like the lineup moving forward, I mean, it's been a couple years now, and I've tried to pay attention to kind of him and his patterns of thought, his patterns of like reasoning. And if I were I would not be shocked if Mikel Arteta came away from the Southampton result and said, uh, "We played better in that game. We made mistakes. We made incredibly costly mistakes. Same lineup, Granit Xhaka in, get rid of the mistakes, and we can do it." I would not be shocked if he did that. Um, to the point that I might even say like 65% sure that I'm pretty sure he's going to do the same lineup. But we'll see. On the other hand, there's a part of me that says, there's like a stagnation, there's like a faltering that's happening here. Um, Maybe a change for change's sake, for like morale's sake, might be a good move as a manager. Um, I think that sometimes in sports, you do end up sending the wrong message by playing the same lineup repeatedly when it's not working. Even if it's a small tweak, sometimes that can have like a little bit of a boost for your guys. So there is a part of me that says, Arteta, this is your chance, man. This is, you got to get, you probably have to get three,
Yeah.
at least one, at the Etihad. You can't go in there and lose by multiple goals. You just can't do it. So like, this is, go full Pep here. This is your chance.
Yeah, and I've been thinking a lot about this, and I think I ultimately landed on kind of matching them, in the three diamond three formation as being potentially the most likely, if I was going to make a change. And I think you make a change here because I think what Southampton did in this match has to be kind of responded to, because I think it's only going to be worse going forward. So, you watched that first half, and Rob Holding was just made to be the free man, and everybody else was covered off, and it was Rob Holding try to beat us. And, if Southampton is able to do that to us, what is Manchester City going to do in that same kind of situation? And I think that it just really puts a lot of pressure on him. And, it's one of those, when Rob Holding first came in, teams don't necessarily have the film and being able to build a game plan against him. So maybe he's flattering to deceive a bit early with his performances, but now there's 5 matches of film, and Pep was looking forward to this match. I guarantee you they were focused on Arsenal or versus Sheffield United.
Mhm.
They were looking to this match, and I bet you they were training to figure out how we're going to do that. So it feels like you have to do something here. And I don't know. I've gone back and forth. Like, do you move Party to right back? I don't know if that really, because it's, Adam. Like, what do you think? Is it trying to get your 11 best players on the field and position kind of be damned, or is it more focused on something else?
It's a good question. I think it's got to be a little bit of both. Um, but I think that from a tactical like mindset perspective, what you're talking about, Scott, where you're saying match, I think that has to play a big part of it. So what's concern number one when you face Manchester City? It's the big Norwegian guy. So for me, like, I'm doing everything I can to strengthen. I mean, he scores a lot of goals by running past defenders. So I'm looking to strengthen that area right around there as much as I can. I'm doing everything I can if I'm Mikel Arteta to make sure that Gabriel is the one who's marking him. Whether it's Holding or Kivior or Tierney or Ben White, I want Gabriel on him because he's a dog. He's big. He will fight him, and that's what needs to be done. And then you look at concern number 2. I think is Jack Grealish coming off the left. So, do I want to throw Reece Nelson out there and try to have him mark Jack Grealish? No. So could Thomas Partey do it? I don't think so. I really don't. I just, it's not his skill set. He's like a smooth gliding gazelle of a player, who is great when he's great. And, when there's a lot of pressure, he seems to shrink. And I don't really want to make him change positions for a game like this. So I'm looking at trying to keep Gabriel on Holland. I'm looking at trying to keep Benjamin White on Grealish to the extent possible. And then, I'm less worried off the right, whether it's Bernardo or Riyad Mahrez. We might have to go a little weaker on that side. So that's probably Zinchenko still, because we need that progression. We need to that beating the press.
Mm-hmm.
Can't take out the captain. Clearly can't take out Granit Xhaka. Saka and Martinelli are the stars of the show. So I look at all of that and I say, okay, what's the least damage I can do from there? Based on the Liverpool and West Ham game, I would go Kivior over Tierney.
Okay.
Because I thought he cost us a lot, particularly in Liverpool. I was shocked after watching the film back and seeing how many almost gimmies he gave away against Liverpool, at least 2. I was shocked to see that he came in the 88th minute. That's crazy. And then I do blame him for Jared Bowen's goal too. But so whether it's but regardless of who it is, I do think that I gravitate more toward make 5 defenders instead of 4.
Yeah.
We're going to have to ask multiple players to be more defensive in this game. We just are, because if we come out in a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1 and try to play 3,000 passes, play around them, I would question, I would at least feel iffy at full strength doing that against Manchester City. They're just in great form. They're a millions of pounds, hundreds of millions of pounds side. They just are. So I would probably take more your approach and try to match their formation a little bit. They're going to come out in that 4-1-4-1 or 3-2.
Yeah, it's
4-1.
Yeah. It depends. It's a very it fluctuates based on the performance, right? Because I imagine you'll see John Stones come back into the middle of the center, or I guess the middle of the defense, but plays as a center back when they don't have the ball, and then plays as a midfielder when they do have the ball, and play this kind of where it's very classic Pep, right? We're just going to stick all the guys in the middle of the field, mm-hmm. and we're just going to control the match. And I think that if Arsenal don't do that, it's very easy for Arsenal to get overrun in the middle of the pitch and just not be able to see the ball. And then you'll have the suffocating pressure of not being able to get out of our own half. I maybe would play devil's advocate, saying Tierney maybe is the guy there. I think you think he's had the experience as being the left-sided center back. It's more of his natural positions kind of a thing, right? Where he's not asked to do midfielder type things. If we do have the ball, maybe he can go to the wide left spot where I think he's a little bit more comfortable, rather than being in more of the the DM type positions that Zinchenko would be in. That allows us to actually have maybe a potential double pivot. You get more of Partey in the positions that he likes, because against the Southampton he had to drop back into that deep right position over and over again, and I feel like that kind of destabilized so much of the build-up. Mm-hmm. I keep going back to this. It's just it doesn't feel like there's a good option here overall. I think that we need to have some control in this match. I don't think it can be a 65% possession to them. I think if we can get it closer to 60-40 or 45-55, mm-hmm. I feel a lot better about our chances, because I don't want to see wave after wave of attack against Arsenal.
No, and I think that I think that even with a lesser a lineup we don't feel great about, that's not really what I'm expecting. Is wave after wave. That's, if you look at things like field tilt and shots and stuff, even in the games where it's 0-0, it's usually City, it's 70% possession and they're the tilt is all their direction, everything like that. But I mean, Arsenal are a good enough side to neutralize that. I think, but I mean, it's going to take some, like, let's, make no bones about it. You cannot switch off at the back in this game. We can't have, Rodri or Gundogan or somebody making a run to the back post unmarked, because they're going to, with Arsenal's luck and with how good City are, they're going to put it exactly where it needs to be. It's just going to happen. So we just need to do everything we can to make the shots the least valuable they can be. So yeah, I mean, I agree about controlling the game, and for me, that I want to keep Partey in the midfield. I'm crazy disappointed with his last two performances. I think, as the guy who's almost 30 in this side, second highest paid player on the team, I mean, you got to do more than this, bud. You got to do more. He hasn't been good.
Yeah, right. Like I feel like at some point it's like the expectations are crazy high, and the level of difficulty of the position that we put him in, like where he is kind of like on the island. But then I also go back to, like, you're supposed to be one of the best midfielders in the world. And this is why we signed you, right? Like,
yeah,
it feels like it's like he's in a tough position, but that's why you get paid the big bucks, right? So
he's got to be.
Yeah, I've been disappointed with him too,
Rodri.
right?
He can't be a liability. He's got to be part of the reason we win. And it's not even just him. Anyone we put there, if we come out next season and are playing Declan Rice at 6, he's got to be the same. Mm-hmm. If you're gonna be the single pivot at this level, you can't perform like that. And regardless of whether he's completing, line breaking passes and how many dribbles he's got and how many turnovers he's got, I mean, there's no way around the fact that carelessness in his own third, 30 minutes into the game, up 2-0, starts the West Ham comeback.
Yeah.
I don't think Declan Rice handled the ball. I don't think I would call that back, but I do think Paqueta dove, but that's neither.
Yeah, I think two things can be true there, right? I think it's a dive, but I also think he's fouled, right? I think he absolutely buys the penalty, but I also think that when you dive in like that, even if he's trying to pull out, he still makes the contact. I think that's still a foul regardless. And I think that's some of the thing to sort of like the incentives that end up with, the refereeing. Like if he tries to stay up there, even though he's fouled and like he's knocked off balance, like, do you get that call? I don't think so. I think it's very similar to the Jesus one where he gets, against Leeds, where he gets, tapped on the knee. You look at, his next step, like he probably could have stumbled and tried to stay up, but he gets the penalty, right? He gets fouled and he dives, but it's a dive, but it's still a foul. I think that's a similar kind of situation there.
City are very good at that.
100%, right? Bernardo Silva, like, I feel like is gonna, have his, goggles on and ready to go.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but was it last season already, or was this the first game? I think it was last season. He drew the penalty against Xhaka.
Yeah.
The shirt grab.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I'm looking for people to not make those kind of tackle attempts near goal. The last thing that Arsenal can do is give City a penalty or two penalties, or So
no red cards too this time.
And there's certainly an argument that maybe if you're looking for that maybe Rob Holding is not your guy. He does get a little too stuck in and
plays on the edge, right? Because I think we saw that in the FA Cup match where, because he knows he can't stay with somebody over open yards, he really he kind of does like the Per Mertesacker thing, but doesn't do Per Mertesacker things as good as Per Mertesacker did, where he's overly aggressive in that first phase of play, trying to cut out passes or get up close to a person. And like there's just so many times where you can just do a wall pass and spin on Rob Holding, and then he's 5 yards behind the play. And it's just a real bummer.
He's a limited player who would probably be fine, at Wolves or something. But yeah, he's at Arsenal, and Arsenal play a high line now. So Sorry, bud. And I think
Yeah, so
if we were healthy, he wouldn't be starting.
100% right, because he's the third, maybe fourth choice at that
I
position, right?
think
If like
I
depends
think
on
you
how many
can. Yeah,
other people are around, but
people absolutely hate the argument, but I think in literal terms, if every other player is healthy, it goes Saliba, then one of White or Tomiyasu, and then the other one, and then Rob Holding, most likely.
yeah,
So
yeah. I mean that does kind of double count like the right back position, but if you're actually if you were literally listing out a ranking choice of who would play right center back, Rob
yeah,
Holding would be fourth on that list.
so he's like an operational third choice, literal fourth choice.
Yeah. Um, I think that there's a lot of topics to choose from today, but I think I want to finish talking about Gabriel Jesus.
Yeah,
I know that there's been a bit of discussion about like, do we need an upgrade on him, um, which I think is unfair because if we were talking, a couple months ago when he got hurt at the World Cup, we thought that he was the most transformative player on this team. But now some of the finishing stuff has come back to bite him a bit, and that's kind of changing people's thoughts on him. I just want to, feel you out. Like, where are you on Gabriel Jesus right now?
I'm in his corner.
It's a good spot to be, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I've shared a lot of my opinions since this game. I think that it was a good performance by him. No, um, he left. I mean, no doubt he left opportunities on the table. That's like the risk you take with a player of his skill set. But this isn't like something that we this isn't a surprise. I think that Jesus is holistically a very difficult player to upgrade on.
Mm-hmm.
Vlahovic gets a lot of love as the example of like the target man striker. But I think if you bring in Vlahovic, you bring in Dominic Calvert-Lewin, they finish some headers that Jesus leaves. They probably finish some that are between the 6 and 18-yard lines, that Jesus might miss. But the like, what's the effect to the ecosystem that is the attack?
Yeah.
We saw Gabriel Martinelli struggle pretty heavily when he had a striker who did not want to leave that little area between kind of between the sticks, really. And that was a hard thing for him. So I think you see more goals come from the striker, but you see everybody else's tail off would be the effect.
Yeah.
The other thing, I mean, what it just feels like a very unrealistic desire from the fans for me, and not unrealistic to say Jesus should finish better, because I think he should. That swoon right before the World Cup really cost him a lot in terms of like the
Yeah.
XG goal gap. Coming into this one, he had 4 goals and 3, though. I think people forget
Yeah,
about
and
that.
so yeah, he's at 4 goals in 5.1 expected goals. He was 5 goals, or basically 4 goals and four before this match. So yeah, this was a tough one, right? 6 shots, led the team. Like that's a really positive thing. 1.1 expected goals. Some really decent chances there overall, but it's just the one shot on target and not able to put any of them in. I don't know. I kind of like thought back and it's like there wasn't really any one like really bad miss there. I think it was kind of like the accumulation of like,
Yeah,
some half chances kind of thing that just disappointed. I think the frustrating part for me was like it felt like in the last 10 minutes, he was almost more looking to create a penalty
yeah.
versus create a shot or a shooting opportunity for him. Where I
Mm-hmm.
think he was starting to feel it too, right? Where it's like, I don't have it today, so I'm going to try to create it through a
Yeah.
penalty.
Oh yeah, I mean, and that's a very common trait in athletes, to be honest. I think only the elite guys will say, I'm having a bad day. I'm going to play through it, and I'm not going to look for. I mean, I'm a Minnesota Timberwolves fan. Like the last 2 postseasons, I've had to endure Karl Anthony Towns, who the first non-call that makes him upset destroys his game. The entire rest of
Yeah,
the game, he's just off and he's barking at the refs, and so it's understandable. It's disappointing when the stakes are that high, and then you start to look back and you say, God, if Jesus just put one of those away, then the Odegaard and the Saka are the equalizer and the game winner, right? So but I think ultimately Southampton is more of a blip for him
Mhm.
than it is like his calling card. You know what I mean? Like he is not as a player, he is not that performance. And that's why it's disappointing. And players have disappointing performances sometimes. The reason that they're disappointing is because they're so good most of the time, or like all of the time for some. So I think it's an overreaction. I've already written for our site why I don't think that the stuff about the big number 9 makes any sense. Why, tactically, financially, we just committed to 2 different strikers for 5 years each. It would be
Yeah.
a complete mess to go back on that now.
Right, and then we already have a striker mess on our hands trying to figure out what we're going to do with the backup next year. Is it going to
Yes.
be Eddie and Nketiah? Is it going to be Flo Balogun? That's already a headache. And if I was, doing my prioritization of my shopping list for next season, backup striker is way down the list of things.
Yeah, low enough to the point where the amount you're likely to have left is not going to be transformative at that position. I mean, we're talking about Rasmus Højlund, the 20-year-old, came from the Austrian league to Atalanta, and he's got less goals than Jesus in about the same amount of time. And Atalanta are going to ask for like 50 million euros for him. And this is for a 20-year-old guy. I mean, in my opinion, put him into the Arsenal lineup, and no, it's not. He's not going to match. He's not going to come close. It's going to be worse than Eddie Nketiah was because he's just not ready yet.
Yeah.
And you're paying 50 million euros for that guy. So what do you think is going to cost for a guy who's ready to play for Arsenal, who's a plug and play? It's going to be a lot of money.
Yeah.
So
No, I
it
think
all
that
adds
that
up.
really, yeah, it does match, right? Like, right. Like, I think we all would have our list of things that we're able to do, and in a perfect world, right, you would have 2 really good strikers back there, but I
Who are
think I think
complementary.
this is right, and like this is part of I think we're the team's ahead of schedule where we built depth for making a top 4 run,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that the depth that we have has shown itself to be at that level that we needed it to be for a top 4 run, and now it's being able to compete in 2 fronts and be able to really solidify and take that next step. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that this season has been amazing, but it did feel like it's coming just a bit too early. I'm still optimistic that this isn't the end, even if it is the end for the season.
Yeah, I mean we'll have to come back to it after Wednesday. Because that's going to be. I mean, you put out the chart this morning. It's going to be so big.
Yeah. So just to reiterate, so like I did pull the numbers. I ran the simulation last night, and a win really helps Arsenal. Not surprisingly, that's a kind of rare event. It's about a 20% for Arsenal to be able to win right now in this match. But a win for Arsenal brings us from about a 33% chance of that's where I have Arsenal right now, and it brings us to 70%. So that's a huge 6-point swing. A loss is basically season over. That puts us at 14%. So
Mhm.
it's really, really tough. A draw helps a little bit, but it basically kind of helps us stand still where we need Manchester City to drop and make a mistake going forward.
Yeah.
With that, how do you see the match going? You got a prediction?
Uh. Yeah. No. I think. All right. I have to be honest. I do think that we're going to lose. Um. I don't like to be a lose predictor, and I hope that
Mm-hmm.
I'm wrong. But I think it's going to be probably like 3-1. We seem to be hanging our heads a little bit. Um. The personnel problems that we've had, there are so few sides who could withstand essentially 2 injuries at the same position and come out and play as well. Um, you know, Especially when you're like you're talking about a club that runs a high line and the 2 injuries are basically the first and next choice back there. So it's just I think it's just we got more than we were trying for, or not more than we were trying for, but more than we expected this season. And just was not quite there to be able to withstand that level of like injury and turnover and everything. So I am a little bit afraid that there's going to be another relatively early goal from City. Maybe we show 15, 20 minutes that are promising after that. I think, maybe we grab one when we're like 2-0 down, but City put it away. Not a complete blowout or anything like that, but a game that City get ahead and kind of stay ahead, and then finally put the nail in the coffin late. That's my prediction. Holland
Yeah,
does get one.
yeah, I kind of am leaning 2-0 to City. I think it's a very similar kind of play out. Like they get a first half goal and then they just strangle the match, making it like the most boring thing to watch in the whole world.
Yeah.
And perhaps, Arsenal really overcommit late because we have to, and they get something on the break and make it two. That's kind of how I see it playing out. Unfortunately, like there is a path, obviously, for Arsenal to be able to do it. Like I think that if it does happen, it's going to come through like Martinelli or Saka. I think being able to exploit some space potentially, and like I think that is the way that Arsenal be able to get a goal in this match. It's through them. If we're able to maybe take advantage early and do that, then it is kind of like a see if we can sustain and I guess handle the waves of pressure that are probably due to come.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I see Arsenal getting more than 2 goals though in this match.
Yeah, I mean collectively we gave them 0 and 1, so that sounds right. I think that the dream scenario for me is that that facing their former side is what gets Zinchenko and Jesus up for this. They were 2 of the more disappointing guys out there against Southampton, and I would love for this to be for them an opportunity to say, you messed up. You should have given me. I mean, City could use Zinchenko right now, as good as Ake has been. Hopefully he's out on Wednesday, but it seems like maybe 50-50 at this point. So that would be the dream. But yeah, I think that you're right. Any sort of result is going to probably feel like a smash and grab type of thing if we can get it. It's just it's a difficult fixture to have when things are not kind of vibing your way. And even going back a couple of weeks, I think I felt more confident in a situation where Arsenal maybe not even run the table, but get most of the points in all the other games and drop maybe the full 3 against City and then get some help being the way to the championship. So it's tough. I really hope that we're both wrong on this one. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, and I think to end things on a slightly positive note, it feels like this game doesn't have the same sort of mental block for Arteta that Liverpool does. I think that he's carrying a lot of scars from playing against Liverpool as a player, and I think that kind of seeps potentially into the team, where I feel like we've had worse performances against Liverpool than we have against Manchester City. And I feel like Arsenal aren't afraid of the moment against Manchester City. So yeah. I think that would at least be a positive. That I don't think that the Etihad is going to be a stadium that is intimidating and is going to make us feel like we've lost in the tunnel. This is the first time this season that we've had Thomas Partey against them, and I think that is something that could potentially really right. If we do think that he is the midfielder that we do think he is, like this is the time for him to show it. This is the time for Zinchenko to step up. This is the time for Jesus to step up. I think those are the guys that we are absolutely going to be looking for. They are basically going to be the spine of this team against them. And I think if we're going to have any sort of chance, it's going to be those guys being able to win and not have us be overrun in their positions.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. That is a good point, that their building is not the fortress that Liverpool's is, and that does make the game a little bit more up for grabs early. One really, really encouraging thing, and I would love for Arteta to get this back in our guys' minds, is like, you guys went into Anfield and you took 2. 35 minutes of basically dominance. Liverpool had a couple of good chances in the first 35 minutes, but it was an impressive showing for 35.
I think it was an impressive performance for 80 minutes, right?
Yeah,
I thought that, yeah.
I just meant
overall,
consecutive. But
yeah, for sure. The Liverpool definitely got back into it, with that goal, and they put some pressure on. But I think, if the game ended at 80 minutes, we would have come away feeling really, really good about the performance. But it was the last 10, 15 minutes that really, kind of colored the result.
Yes, it absolutely did. So to the extent that he can, you almost want to be like, Arteta, show them the first 80 minutes of that game, because that was a much more hostile environment with less talented players, but much more hostile. And I think, minor side prediction is I think that result will look better in a vacuum at the end of the season than it does right now. Liverpool are quietly sneaking back into the European spots. They're not going to miss Europe. Tottenham are now going to be on their second acting manager. That just happened. That was confirmed during this recording.
Wow. Okay.
Stellini is out. So,
he deserved that for you doing that back four.
Talk about galaxy brain, right? There you go. But yeah, so it's, their spot I think is up for grabs. Villa are still ahead of Liverpool. Who knows what can happen there? So I think they're going to get maybe fifth, maybe sixth, be not so far off the fourth.
15% chance or so of sneaking into fourth.
Yeah, it's not. So, we might be talking about going to Champions League side Anfield and grabbing a draw. I don't know. I just feel like that result will look better now, it will look better at the end of the season than it did. Because I remember people were saying they hadn't had a win in 3 weeks or something, and I'm like, well, 2 weeks of that were the international break. I think it was 2 games before that they had beaten Manchester United 7-0. Manchester United were in third place. What do you need from us? That was in the same building too. That was Anfield. So yeah, I think Arteta's got to make those guys remember what they were feeling the first 30 minutes of that game, because I thought, it wasn't perfect, but they came out and looked like they were you can kind of see teams make that leap where you go into a difficult game and you don't hide from it. I was really pleasantly surprised at some of the North London Derby performances we've seen in the Conte era, where it was this isn't the Arsenal that I've been watching the past few years, where it's we're trying to hang on for dear life against these big teams. We're going to control this game. So get them there. Whether they feel the most I hope that it seems like Arteta is a holistic and empathic enough guy to be able to go into the room and say, this is the guy that everybody's ready to circle the wagons around, whether it's Rob Holding or somebody else, and make that change, because that's whether it's Tierney, Kivior, I don't care. I don't care which 11 start if we get a win. I do not care about that. I just want to win it. I just want to get the result. So
I think that's a good spot to end it. We all want to get that result. It doesn't matter how it happens. Let's just get that result. So I think that'll be it for today. If you enjoyed the episode and you'd like to support the podcast, please consider subscribing, becoming a premium member. It really helps us to be able to do more of these kinds of things. If you liked the show, ratings, reviews, I suppose, are always good, doing those kinds of things. If you want to stay up to date, all of the social media stuff is Canon Stats, so Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, do those things. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you after the next one, and believe, guys, we got to believe. We can do it.
Got to believe.
Bye, Adam.